It was past midnight when I missed the last train home. Shivering on the empty platform, I called my husband, asking him to come pick me up. He answered, his voice airy and completely unbothered. Give me an hour. In that single second, the illusion shattered. I knew exactly what that hour meant. Tonight, like so many nights before, would be a test of endurance. A waiting game with no end. For the years we'd been married, Wayne had used this petty, calculated tactic to punish me. A lingering retaliation for the times I'd run late putting on my makeup, when we first started dating. When my grandmother was on her deathbed, drawing her final, shallow breaths, he lied about the driving distance. It's only a 3-hour drive, Gloria. We have time. By the time we pulled into my childhood driveway, there was nothing left but a cold casket and a room smelling of incense. When my appendix flared up, a white-hot, blinding pain in my lower abdomen, he texted that his car was pulling into the driveway. Instead, he left me writhing on the freezing hardwood kitchen floor for 30 agonizing minutes. Now I sat on the curb of a desolate street, gently rubbing my blistered, swollen heels, a bitter laugh escaping my throat. My phone buzzed in my palm. A foolish, desperate spark of hope flared in my chest. It was extinguished instantly. By the way, did you drop Delilah's dress off at the dry cleaners? His text read. Her commencement ceremony is in exactly 72 hours, 5 minutes, and 21 seconds. Looking at those numbers, so agonizingly precise, down to the very second, the dam broke. Years of swallowed tears and quiet compromises came rushing out. I stared into the dark, empty street, and for the first time, I simply didn't want to hold on anymore. My entire body ached by the time I finally dragged myself through the front door. I fumbled with the medicine cabinet, pulling out a bottle of soothing ointment to tend to my bruised heels myself. After years of marriage, I had become an expert at carrying my own heavy, silent burdens. A moment later, the bedroom door clicked open. Wayne stood in the hallway, his eyes locking onto me as I massaged my raw skin. He frowned, a slight crease forming between his brows. I was just getting ready to head out to get you, he said, his tone casual. Why did you walk back? And wearing those ridiculous heels? You're just asking for trouble. It wasn't that far, I muttered, my voice stiff as I walked past him toward the kitchen. I was looking for the microwave. I'd texted him this morning, asking him to save me some dinner. But when I pulled the microwave door open, my hands froze. It was completely empty. Did you take Delilah's dress to the cleaners? Wayne asked again, ignoring my silence. He leaned against the counter. Delilah was a college student we'd been sponsoring together. Lately, though, the boundaries between them had begun to blur in ways that made my skin crawl. I was slowly realizing I'd brought a viper into my home. Seeing my blank stare, Wayne pressed on, his voice taking on that familiar defensive edge. I know she told me last week there was no rush. But she's a young girl, Gloria. She wants to look beautiful for her graduation. Just get it done early. You asked me to do something this morning, I started, turning to face him. But Before I could finish, his phone blared. Wayne stepped away into the living room, murmuring into the receiver. When he returned a few minutes later, he was carrying a takeout bag. Since you haven't eaten, he said, setting it on the table. Here. He turned back toward the bedroom, and as he did, a sudden glint of silver caught the light. It was a small, masculine ear stud. I had bought him countless pieces of jewelry over the years, but he had always rejected them, calling them too feminine, or not his style. Yet last week, when we took Delilah out to dinner, she had giggled over a magazine ad of a male celebrity with a cartilage piercing, calling it incredibly hot. The very next afternoon, Wayne had come home with a fresh hole in his left ear. During the early rocky years of our marriage, I had begged him to compromise on the little things. He'd always shrugged me off, claiming he was a free spirit who hated being managed. Now the truth was glaringly obvious. It wasn't that he couldn't change. It was just that I wasn't worth the effort. I shook the thoughts from my head and ripped open the plastic takeout bag with a loud, sharp snap. Inside was a bowl of extra spicy Sichuan noodle soup, the broth hidden beneath a thick, angry layer of red chili oil. Wayne lived for spicy food. I couldn't tolerate a single drop. Normally, even when he was being dismissive, he never made mistakes when it came to my allergies or food preferences. But then I saw the receipt stapled to the bag. On the back, written in a neat, loopy handwriting, was a note. Thank you for giving me this internship opportunity, Professor. You've been working so hard. I ordered this specially for you. Make sure to eat it while it's hot. I wasn't even getting a meal he'd bought for me. I was getting her unwanted leftovers. A hot spike of anger flared in my chest. I crumpled the receipt into a tight ball and threw it fiercely into the trash can. Wayne came back out for a glass of water, letting out a soft, exasperated laugh. What is it now? You're picking fights over a bowl of noodles? You gave Delilah a job at your firm? I demanded. Yeah, he said, taking a sip of water. Her grades aren't stellar, but she's young, eager, and has a lot of potential. But when I asked you to interview my cousin last semester, you said your company had a strict policy against nepotism. I said, the hurt cutting deep into my voice. Wayne sighed, looking at me as if I were a difficult child. Babe, that's completely different. Skill is one thing, but brand image is another. Delilah has the look. She represents the energy we want. The fight drained out of me. My shoulders slumped. Oh, and by the way, Wayne added, pausing at the bedroom door, you don't need to buy me any more accessories. They're a bit dated. Delilah offered to help me pick out some new pieces. She's an art major. She actually understands modern aesthetics. He closed the door behind him, leaving me alone in the dim kitchen. I walked into the bathroom to wash my face. As my hand touched the brass handle, my eyes locked onto a brand new digital clock mounted directly above the mirror. A bitter memory surfaced. Last week, Wayne had spent 10 minutes extra in the shower, and Delilah had called my phone repeatedly, frantic, crying that she was terrified he had slipped and hit his head. The next day, this clock appeared. I looked around, suddenly feeling like a stranger in my own home. On the towel rack, his old blue bath towel, the one he'd used for a year, was gone. In its place hung a plush, lavender-colored one. Lavender, Delilah's absolute favorite color. In the corner of the vanity, a clear plastic cup was neatly wrapped in a Ziploc bag and tucked away safely. It was the cup Delilah had used when she stayed over on our couch a few weeks ago. He couldn't even bring himself to throw away her used cup. He had preserved it like a relic. Meanwhile, my old things, my favorite hand lotions, my worn-out vanity organizers, had been cleared out and thrown away to make room. The sense of sanctuary, the delicate order I had fought so hard to maintain in this marriage, was completely gone. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from my mother. Gloria, sweetie, have you made up your mind? Your father and I are settled here in Sydney now. What are you going to do over there all by yourself? My mother had seen through my marriage long ago. She had spent the last year begging me to leave him and join them in Australia. I typed back, my fingers surprisingly steady. Mom, please start the visa paperwork for me. I don't want to keep hurting myself like this. The next morning, I woke up to find we were out of my usual facial cotton pads. On the marble counter, Wayne had placed 3 unopened packs of a new brand. The packaging was covered in bright, cutesy pink cartoon characters, completely jarring against the minimalist, neutral aesthetic of our bathroom. My hand hovered over the box. Wayne leaned against the doorframe, a faint smile on his lips. Those are super popular right now. There was a summer sale, and Delilah grabbed a whole case for us. Right, I murmured. The cotton felt soft against my skin, but it felt like tiny needles. My face stung. I've always been particular about my skincare, only buying brands I've trusted for years. Before we married, I told him I would handle the household shopping. Now slowly, silently, a stranger was taking over my space. I'm not used to this brand, I said quietly. Let's stick to the old one next time. He shrugged. Well, I'll use these. You can buy whatever you want. It's not a big deal. When I walked into the living room, Wayne was kneeling on the carpet, playing with a small tabby cat. He had a severe allergy to cat dander. Years ago, when I had begged him for a kitten, he had flatly refused, claiming it would kill his sinuses. Now he was wearing a medical mask and thick gloves, laughing as the kitten batted at a string. It was a stray Delilah had found shivering near a dumpster last week, and her dorm didn't allow pets. The kitten broke away from Wayne and came over to rub against my ankle. As I stepped back to avoid it, Wayne raised his phone. Don't move, he said. A sharp click echoed in the room. Delilah's always worried you hate the cat, Wayne said, looking down at his screen. Sending her a picture of you two will put her mind at ease. I actually don't like it, I said flatly. Once she graduates and finds an apartment, she needs to take it. Wayne's face stiffened for a fraction of a second. Sensing my coldness, his tone softened, trying to coax me. Come on, Gloria, don't be like that. Didn't you always want a cat? I thought you'd be happy. But I had wanted our cat. A pet we chose together. Not an interloper that took over our living room. At breakfast, looking at the plain ceramic plate in front of me, another memory drifted back, sharp and unbidden. A few months ago, during a weekend trip to a pottery retreat in the Hudson Valley, I had spent hours throwing a beautiful, hand-painted blue and white porcelain dinner set. I wanted to bring it home as a gift for my parents. But on the drive back, Wayne had insisted on packing the heavy plates at the very top of our largest suitcase, right under the lid. He claimed he needed to cushion a giant, fluffy plush bear Delilah had won at an arcade. When we unpacked, the porcelain set was in shattered, jagged pieces. The suitcase lining was dusted in blue glaze. Delilah stood next to him, her eyes welling with tears because a tiny bit of stuffing was leaking from her bear's arm. The plate's breaking is just bad luck, Gloria. We'll file a claim with the airline, Wayne had said, barely looking at the ruins of my hard work. Help Delilah sew her bear back together, okay? In the end, my hours of careful creation were swept into a trash bin at the airport. I had returned home empty-handed. Don't forget about Delilah's dress, Wayne muttered, bringing me back to the present. We can't delay it anymore. He took a sip of his coffee. I'm running a company, Gloria. I'm incredibly busy. I hope this is the last time I have to remind you of this. The mention of the dress made the tiny hairs on my arms stand up. He was so meticulous, so fiercely protective of a rented gown for a girl who wasn't his family. Yet for me, there was only the leftover scraps of his attention. I gripped my fork, a sudden wave of anger washing over me. But then I slowly let it go, exhaling a quiet breath. Why even bother arguing? In a few days, I would be gone anyway. Years ago, when we first started dating and talked about the future, he told me he hated the bureaucratic trap of a marriage certificate. He suggested we wait to sign the papers until I got pregnant. I had agreed, blinded by love. But in all these years, he had never truly touched me with real intimacy. We had the ceremony, the big party, the shared house, but we had never actually gone to the courthouse. I didn't even need to hire a divorce lawyer. There were no assets to split, no legal ties to sever. How beautifully simple. I spent the day wrapping up my remaining projects at the university. By evening, I walked across the campus to turn in my keys and final resignation papers to the administration office. As I neared the grand campus auditorium, the rich, swelling chords of an orchestra drifted through the double doors, the graduation gala. I intended to walk past, but something made me stop. My gaze anchored onto the center of the polished dance floor. Delilah was spinning in a slow, graceful circle, wearing a stunning champagne-colored gown. She was radiant, her face lit up with a brilliant smile. Holding her by the waist, guiding her steps with effortless poise, was Wayne. My breath caught, a cold lump forming in my throat. That champagne gown was my wedding reception dress. My absolute favorite piece of clothing, tucked away in the back of my closet. Wayne had gotten a haircut, styling his hair to look like a college student himself. He looked youthful, laughing softly at something she whispered. They were close, so close their shoulders brushed with every step. A wave of dizziness washed over me. Years ago, I was the administrator who had personally reviewed the financial aid applications. I saw that Delilah's parents had passed away, that she was living on government assistance, and my heart had broken for her. I was the one who convinced Wayne that we should sponsor her tuition, her rent, her life. I pulled her out of the mud. And here she was, wearing my dress, holding my husband, standing in the spot that belonged to me. Perhaps my stare was too intense. Wayne froze mid-step, his eyes catching mine. He slowly let go of Delilah's waist and walked toward me, his expression tightening with a sudden, nervous energy. I came to the university to sign the endowment papers, he said, his voice hurried, defensive. I just ran into Delilah. It wasn't planned. The more he explained, the guiltier he looked. I smiled, a genuine, light feeling washing over me. It's fine. Keep her company. I have things to do. He blinked, momentarily stunned by my reaction. Usually, if I saw him looking too closely at a waitress or texting late at night, I would lose my temper. Today, I was perfectly, uncannily calm. Delilah is the student you sponsored after all, Wayne said, trying to regain his footing. I'm just looking out for her on your behalf. Gloria, we need you to sign the final exit forms, a colleague called out, rushing toward us with a clipboard. What exit forms? Wayne's brow furrowed. I didn't answer. He shook his head, a patronizing smile returning to his face. Whatever. It doesn't matter anyway. I can easily support both of you. After I finished the paperwork, my phone buzzed with a text from Wayne. It was a rare, urgent message. I'm coming to pick you up. Stay right there. Seriously, 10 minutes this time. If I'm late by even a second, I'll Venmo you $10,000. I stared at the screen, looking at the desperate promise. The urge to walk to the train station vanished. I pulled up a chair in the campus security booth instead. Waiting for the husband again, Gloria? The elderly guard, Mr. Hudson, asked with a warm, sympathetic smile. Is he going to make it on time today? I'm supposed to lock up and pick up my grandson soon. A flush of embarrassment warmed my cheeks. Wayne was always late. Even the campus security guards knew my husband couldn't be bothered to show up on time for me. 9 minutes later, my phone chimed. A Venmo notification. Wayne Garrick sent you $10,000. I let out a soft, humorless laugh. I stood up, walked out into the baking afternoon heat, and headed straight for the subway station. By the time I reached the entrance of our gated community, I was drenched in sweat. I stopped by the mailroom to pick up our packages. The young clerk behind the counter smiled brightly when he saw me. Oh hey, I have a package for Wayne Loves Delilah. That's your husband's account, right? I'll grab it for you. He handed it over, his eyes shining with admiration. You guys have the cutest couple name. Seriously, relationship goals. The words felt like a physical slap across my face. I took the package, my fingers cold against the cardboard. The temperature of my blood seemed to drop a few degrees. Without my noticing, Delilah had invaded almost every corner of my life. His keys now carried a little plush fox, her favorite animal. His classic leather-wrapped flask had been replaced by a trendy, pastel travel mug. Even the smart lock code to our front door had been changed to her birthday. When he first changed the lock, I had been touched, thinking he had finally remembered my birthday. It was only later that I realized Delilah and I shared the exact same day. I collapsed onto the sofa, mindlessly scrolling through Instagram. Delilah's latest post popped up on my feed. A photo of her and Wayne, head to head, smiling broadly. How lucky am I to have someone so gentle in my corner? Her caption read, Mr. Garrick, here's to another year of standing by each other. More than just friends. A second later, a little red heart popped up. Wayne had liked it instantly. I stared at that tiny red heart for a long, quiet moment. Then with a numb finger, I swiped past. The front door clicked open. Wayne walked in, holding the champagne wedding gown in his hand, crumpled and smelling of cheap perfume. He tossed it onto the sofa next to me. Get this dry cleaned and put it away, he said casually. You and Delilah are basically the same size. She really wanted to try on a designer piece, so I let her have her moment. Don't be mad. I looked at the wrinkled fabric of the dress I had treasured for years. I didn't even look up at him. Don't bother cleaning it, I said. Just throw it in the trash. He froze, staring at me in disbelief. What? You love this dress. You've kept it preserved like gold. Why would you throw it away? A dull ache throbbed in my chest. He knew. He had always known how much that dress meant to me. Yet, the moment Delilah asked, he hadn't hesitated for a single second to hand it over. Seeing the hollow look in my eyes, Wayne pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Within an hour, a delivery service arrived, lining our living room with racks of the latest designer gowns. One of them was a breathtaking limited edition piece. Wayne lifted the dress from the rack, holding it up with a triumphant smile. I saw you liked this on your Pinterest board yesterday. I knew you'd want it. I had my assistant track down a personal shopper in Paris to get it flown in overnight. Don't be angry anymore, okay? Looking at the beautiful silk, I realized how incredibly easy I used to be to appease. An expensive toy to quiet a crying child. Even though I had officially resigned, the dean had personally requested that I give a brief speech at the commencement ceremony as the graduating class's administrative counselor. Standing on the stage, looking out at the rows of students in black caps and gowns, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. After years in education, watching class after class step into the world, I spoke into the microphone, my voice steady and resonant. Seeing student Delilah Cross, whom my husband and I have sponsored for years, graduate today, feels like the perfect, quiet closing chapter to my own career here. As the applause faded, Delilah walked up the steps to the stage. She was wearing the freshly pressed champagne gown, standing out like a star under the stage lights. She took the microphone, launched into a long, emotional speech, and spent 5 minutes praising Wayne's generosity. She didn't mention my name once. I stood off to the side, my brows drawing together as a cold sense of dread settled in my stomach. Suddenly, Delilah paused, a playful, sharp smile spreading across her lips. She looked down at the audience, then turned her eyes to me. I'm sure you're all wondering why I haven't thanked Mrs. Whitman, she said, her voice amplified clearly through the speakers. Gloria Whitman, our university counselor, is listed as my official sponsor on paper. But in reality, she has never given me a single dollar of her own money. She doesn't deserve a single word of my gratitude. A collective gasp rippled through the auditorium. Hundreds of faces turned toward me. The whispers started instantly, sharp, mocking, judgmental. I froze on the stage, the blood rushing to my ears, turning my hands icy cold. Delilah's smile widened. She leaned closer to the microphone, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. And there's one more thing. I know for a fact that Mrs. Whitman and Mr. Garrick were never legally married. They aren't husband and wife. In fact, they broke up weeks ago. She turned her gaze to the front row, where Wayne sat, his face drained of all color. Today, as I graduate, I finally have the courage to say what's in my heart. Wayne, you've stood by me through 7 years of school. You are my savior, my mentor, my everything. Will you marry me? The auditorium went dead silent for a fraction of a second, before exploding into a deafening roar of cheers and applause. I looked desperately toward Wayne. His face was stark white. He stumbled up the stairs of the stage, almost tripping over his own feet. He grabbed the microphone from Delilah's hand. I do, he said into the mic. The words echoed off the high ceilings. My mind went entirely blank, the last of my strength evaporating. I turned and ran. I fled down the backstage stairs, tears blurring my vision as I burst out into the cool night air. He didn't run after me. My phone vibrated violently in my hand, a string of desperate texts lighting up the screen. Gloria, please. I didn't know she was going to do that. I only said yes to calm her down, to protect the company's image. Give me 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. I'm coming to find you. I stared at the blinking screen, my vision swimming in hot tears. I pressed the record button, my voice cracking into a ragged, broken sob. Wayne, in all these years, have you ever been on time even once? I've waited 5 years for you to show up. I am done waiting. We are over. I raised my hand, hailed a passing cab, and gave the driver the address of the airport. My parents were already waiting at the terminal. The moment my mother saw my tear-streaked face, She pulled me into her arms, stroking my hair without a word. As the plane rolled down the runway and lifted into the sky, the tight, suffocating knot in my chest finally began to loosen. Meanwhile, back in the city, Wayne had finally managed to dodge the reporters and quiet Delilah down. When he finally rushed through the front door of our empty apartment, 2 hours had already passed. He stepped into the elevator, his heart pounding against his ribs, preparing himself to face my rage. Instead, he ran into our next-door neighbor, who was returning from a weekend trip. The neighbor smiled, nodding politely. "Hey Wayne, is Gloria going on a trip? I just landed at JFK and swear I saw her walking toward the international departures gate. What country is she off to?" Wayne froze on the spot, his face turning a sickly, hollow white. The hallway outside the apartment smelled faintly of cold rain and the neighbor's leftover takeout. Wayne stood frozen near the elevator, the neighbor's words echoing in his ears. Like a slow, dull thud. International departures gate. "Wayne, is everything okay?" the neighbor asked, frowning slightly as he noticed the color draining from Wayne's face. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Fine. Just tired," Wayne muttered, his voice hollow. He pushed past the man and rushed down the hall, his hand shaking so violently he fumbled with the smart lock 3 times before the door finally clicked open. "Gloria," he called out, his voice sharp, laced with an artificial panicked authority. "Gloria, stop playing games. I know you're in here." Silence answered him. The apartment was deathly quiet, stripped of the soft, ambient sounds that usually filled it. The quiet clatter of porcelain in the kitchen, the hum of her small diffuser, the faint classical music she listened to while reading in the armchair. He stepped into the living room. It was spotless. Too spotless. The racks of designer gowns he had ordered from Paris were still standing near the dining table, their plastic garment covers gleaming under the recessed lights. On the coffee table lay the $10,000 Venmo notification printout, neatly folded. Beside it sat the small ear stud he had worn, along with the luxury watches and leather accessories she had bought him over the years. She hadn't taken a single thing he had ever given her. Wayne sprinted to the master bedroom and yanked open the walk-in closet. Half the space was completely bare. Her shoes, her coats, her silk scarves, the worn wooden jewelry box her father had carved for her, gone. The hangers hung in a rigid, empty row, swaying slightly from the sudden draft. He opened her vanity drawers. Her favorite creams, her perfume bottles, the soft ivory brushes, all gone. In their place, sitting neatly in the center of the white marble surface, was the box of pink cartoon cotton pads Delilah had bought. Wayne felt a sudden, violent surge of nausea. He pulled out his phone, his thumbs flying across the glass as he dialed her number. "The subscriber you are trying to reach is currently unavailable or has been disconnected." He dialed again. Same automated voice. Panic, cold and sharp, seized his chest. He dialed her mother's number in Sydney. The call rang 4 times before a woman's voice answered, smooth and glacial. "Mrs. Whitman," Wayne gasped, his breath ragged. "Is Gloria with you? Did she get on a flight? I need to talk to her. There was a huge misunderstanding at the university." "Wayne," her mother interrupted. Her tone wasn't angry. It was terribly, utterly calm. "Gloria is currently over the Pacific Ocean. She'll be landing in Sydney tomorrow morning. Tell her to turn around," Wayne yelled, pacing frantically across the bare hardwood floor. "We can fix this." She didn't let me explain. Delilah's speech was a surprise. I was just trying to manage a PR disaster. "Wayne," Mrs. Whitman said again, cutting through his frantic babble like a sharp blade. "For 5 years my daughter sat on platforms, curbs, and cold kitchen floors waiting for you. She waited while you played games. She waited while you gave her leftovers. She waited while you let another woman wear her wedding dress." A soft, sad breath escaped her lips over the crackling international line. "You spent years teaching her how to live without you," she whispered. "Don't be surprised now that she finally learned the lesson. Do not call this number again." The line went dead. Wayne lowered the phone, staring at the black screen. The apartment felt suffocatingly vast, a cavernous tomb of glass and concrete. Suddenly, the front door lock chimed. The door swung open and Delilah stepped inside, still wearing the champagne wedding gown, her face flushed with excitement, holding a bottle of cheap sparkling wine. "Wayne," she squealed, kicking off her heels. "Can you believe the press out there? The local news blogs are already posting about us. They're calling it the graduation romance of the year. We need to." She stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes fell on Wayne's face. He was staring at her, really staring at her. Without the bright lights of the stage and the flattering angle of a smartphone camera, the girl standing in his foyer looked small, calculating, and ridiculously out of place against the quiet elegance of the room. The champagne dress, Gloria's dress, hung slightly loose on her shoulders, the hem dragged in. The dirt from the sidewalk. Get out, Wayne said. His voice was barely louder than a whisper, but it carried a terrifying, jagged edge. Delilah blinked, her bright smile faltering. What? Wayne, babe, what are you talking about? We just got engaged. The whole university saw. I said get out. Wayne roared, snatching the wine bottle from her hand and slamming it onto the marble island. The glass shattered, sending cheap alcohol and foam spraying across the kitchen counter. Delilah screamed, jumping back, her eyes wide with genuine terror. Wayne, are you insane? I just saved you from a massive public embarrassment. Gloria was leaving you anyway. She resigned weeks ago. I just gave you a way out so you wouldn't look like a rejected husband. She was leaving me because of you. Wayne shrieked, tears of rage finally spilling down his cheeks. He pointed a shaking finger at the door. Take your take your cotton pads, take that stolen dress, and get the hell out of my house. You can't talk to me like that. Delilah yelled back, her sweet, innocent demeanor completely evaporating, her face twisting into a sharp, bitter sneer. You think you're some innocent victim, Mr. Garrick? You used me. You used me to make her jealous because you were bored. You bought me things, you took me out. You let me take over her space because it made you feel young and powerful. You're just a pathetic, insecure old man who ruined his own marriage. She grabbed her designer purse from the counter, snatched her coat, and glared at him with pure venom. And by the way, she spat, stepping toward the door, I'm turning in my resignation at your firm tomorrow morning. But not before I tell Human Resources about every single personal expense you ran through the company account for me. Let's see how your board of directors likes your brand image then. She slammed the heavy oak door behind her, leaving Wayne alone in the dark. 6 months later. Sydney, Australia. The morning sun over Darling Harbour was brilliant, painting the water in blinding shades of sapphire and gold. The air tasted of salt, eucalyptus, and clean wind. Gloria sat at an outdoor table near the water, holding a warm flat white. Wore a simple, tailored linen suit in terracotta, her dark hair cut into a sleek, shoulder-length bob. Her skin had regained its natural, healthy glow, and her eyes were clear, free of the perpetual red rim of exhaustion that had defined her final years in New York. Beside her sat a stack of architectural blueprints and a tablet displaying her latest project schedule. After moving to Sydney, she had taken a position as a senior administrative director for the University of Sydney's International Exchange Program. It was high-paced, challenging work, but her team respected her. Her hours were honored, and when her shift ended at 5, her time was entirely her own. Her phone chimed on the table. It was a Venmo notification. Wayne Garrick sent you $10,000. Note please. Gloria looked at the notification, a faint, dry smile touching her lips. Every single Tuesday for the past 6 months, at precisely 9 a.m., Wayne had sent her $10,000. Each transaction came with a different note. For the heels. For the dinner. For the porcelain plates. I'm sorry. Please answer me. He had sent over $200,000. He was trying to buy back his guilt, treating her absence like an invoice he could settle if he just threw enough cash at it. Gloria opened the app, hit decline transaction, and transferred the balance straight back to his account. She added a single final note. Refused. Account settled. Then she permanently deleted the app from her phone. Gloria. A warm, cheerful voice called out from the harbor walkway. Julian, a senior lecturer from the Fine Arts Department, a tall, easygoing Australian with sun-bleached hair and laugh lines around his eyes, strolled up to her table, carrying a large cardboard cylinder tube. Morning, Gloria smiled, gesturing for him to take a seat. Is that the print? For the gallery opening? Fresh off the press. Julian grinned, unrolling a large poster on the wooden table. It was an exhibition announcement for a student-led ceramic showcase, featuring a high-resolution photograph of a striking blue and white porcelain platter. The pattern on the platter was intricate, fluid, and unbroken, a piece Gloria had thrown herself in her new studio near Bondi Beach 3 weeks ago. The department head loves it, Julian said, taking a sip of his coffee. She wants to know if you'll agree to put 3 more pieces in the permanent collection. Gloria touched the cool paper of the print, feeling a quiet, deep surge of pride. When she had lived with Wayne, every creative impulse she had was subordinated to his schedules, his needs, his taste. He had smashed her plates for a plush bear. He had tossed her wedding gown to an intern. Here her hands created things that were built to last, celebrated by people who saw their value. Tell her I'd be honored, Gloria said softly. Awesome, Julian smiled. He checked his watch. Oh, by the way, there was a bloke hanging around the faculty building this morning asking for you. Sounded American. Wore a dark suit in 30-degree weather, looking like he was about To pass out from heat stroke. Gloria's hand froze over her coffee cup. The warm morning sun suddenly felt a fraction cooler. An American? She murmured. Yeah. Said his name was Wayne, Julian said, frowning slightly as he noticed the change in her expression. He looked pretty rough, to be honest. Kept asking the receptionist what time your office opened, checking his watch every 5 seconds. Do you know him? Gloria took a slow, deep breath. The familiar, phantom knot in her stomach threatened to tighten, but as she looked out over the vast, glittering harbor, the feeling dissolved into a deep, peaceful stillness. She set her coffee cup down with a light clink. I used to, she said evenly. He's just an old acquaintance who has trouble keeping track of time. Chapter 3. The Waiting Room. The main quadrangle of the University of Sydney was framed by grand, neo-Gothic sandstone buildings and jacaranda trees dripping with violet blossoms. Wayne stood near the stone archway, sweating profusely through his charcoal wool suit. He looked terrible. In 6 months, he had lost 15 pounds. His sharp jawline was covered in uneven, graying stubble. His eyes were hollow and bloodshot, and dark circles bruised the skin beneath them. His firm in New York was in shambles. After Delilah's HR complaint and her subsequent leak to industry blogs, 2 major endowment accounts had canceled their contracts. He had turned over the day-to-day operations to his junior partners, buying a long-haul flight to Australia the moment a private investigator gave him Gloria's new workplace address. He held a massive, ridiculous velvet box in his hand, containing an emerald-cut diamond necklace worth $50,000, along with a thick folder containing the title deeds to their New York house, transferred entirely into her name. He had been standing under the brutal Australian sun for 3 hours. His phone screen glowed, 12:14 p.m. Every 30 seconds, he looked down at his watch. His wrist throbbed with a dull, anxious ache. For the first time in his life, he was the one standing on the platform. He was the one shivering in the heat, watching the crowd, waiting for a figure that refused to appear. Every passing minute felt like a physical lash across his skin. Give me an hour. It's only a 3-hour drive, Gloria. 10 minutes, I promise. Every lie he had ever told her, every delay he had weaponized, returned to haunt him in the scorching afternoon heat. He finally understood the agonizing, soul-crushing weight of waiting for someone who didn't care enough to hurry. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors of the administrative building opened. A group of faculty members walked out, chatting and laughing. Standing in the center of the group was Gloria. Wayne's heart slammed against his ribs like a trapped bird. Gloria, he gasped, his voice raspy and desperate. He broke into a run, stumbling slightly over the cobblestones, shoving past a group of startled students. Gloria. Gloria, stop. It's me. Gloria stopped. Her colleagues paused, looking at him with mild concern and confusion. Julian stepped forward slightly, positioning himself between Wayne and Gloria. But Gloria gently touched Julian's arm, stepping out to face Wayne directly. Wayne stopped 5 feet away from her. He was panting, drenched in sweat, holding out the velvet box and the manila folder with trembling hands. Gloria. He sobbed, his voice cracking violently. I found you. God, I searched everywhere for you. Gloria stood perfectly still. She wore her terracotta linen suit, her dark hair catch the breeze, her expression utterly calm. She didn't look angry. She didn't look hurt. She looked at him with the polite, distant curiosity one reserves for a stranger asking for directions on the street. Hello, Wayne, she said. Her voice was smooth, steady, and entirely devoid of heat. Wayne's breath hitched. That cold, peaceful tone cut deeper than any scream or slap ever could. Gloria, please, Wayne stammered, dropping to one knee right there on the stone courtyard, ignoring the shocked gasps from the surrounding students. He popped open the velvet box, exposing the brilliant emerald diamond, and thrust the folder toward her. Look, I brought everything, he begged, tears streaming down his flushed, sweaty cheeks. I transferred the house to you. I brought the necklace. I kicked Delilah out the exact night you left. I haven't spoken to her in months. My firm is gone, my life is empty, I have nothing without you. He reached out, trying to grab the hem of her trousers. I was late, Gloria. I know I was always late. But I'm here now. I crossed the ocean for you. Please, just give me 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes to explain. Gloria didn't step back. She didn't flinch. She simply looked down at him, kneeling in the dirt. Wayne, she said softly. Yes, yes, babe. Wayne gasped, a desperate, pathetic flash of hope lighting up his eyes. Do you remember the night I missed the train? She asked, her voice echoing clearly across the quiet quadrangle. Wayne froze. Yes. The platform. I stood on that empty platform in the freezing cold for 2 hours, she said, her tone as flat as a reading of a ledger. My heels were bleeding. I was hungry. I called you because I was terrified. She looked straight into his bloodshot, weeping eyes. You told me to give you an hour, she continued. And while I waited, you texted me to ask if I had dry cleaned another woman's dress. I was stupid. I was a monster. Wayne cried out, slamming his forehead against the stone floor. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you're sorry, Wayne, Gloria said gently. But you aren't sorry because you hurt me. You're sorry because I stopped waiting. She looked at her watch, a clean, elegant watch she had bought for herself with her first Australian paycheck. My break is over, she said, turning to Julian and her colleagues. Shall we head to the conference room? Gloria. No. Don't leave me. Wayne shrieked, scrambling up from the ground, reaching wildly for her arm. You can't just walk away. We were together for 5 years. Julian instantly stepped in, his tall, athletic frame completely blocking Wayne's path. Mate, Julian said, his voice dropping into a low, firm warning. Touch her, and I'll have campus security remove you in handcuffs. Step back. Wayne stared past Julian's shoulder at Gloria's back. She didn't look back. Not once. She walked gracefully through the grand stone archway, her steps light, steady, and unhurried, disappearing into the bright, sunlit halls of her new life. Behind her, Wayne fell back onto his knees in the middle of the crowded courtyard. The velvet box slipped from his hands, tumbling onto the cobblestones, the $50,000 diamond catching the harsh glare of the noon sun. Around him, students and professors walked past, whispering, pointing, glancing at their watches as they hurried off to their appointments, leaving the weeping man completely, utterly alone in the heat. Epilogue, on time. 1 year later. A crisp autumn afternoon in Sydney. Gloria stood at the edge of the harbor pier, watching a ferry pull up to the dock. The engine roared gently, sending white foam swirling against the dark wooden pilings. She wore a classic trench coat against the cool sea breeze, a small leather tote slung over her shoulder. Inside the tote was a newly issued Australian permanent residency card and an acceptance letter for her master's program in educational leadership. The ferry gates slid open with a heavy metallic clack. A crowd of commuters poured out, laughing, checking their phones, rushing off to catch their buses. Standing near the edge of the gangway, holding 2 paper cups of hot spiced chai, was Julian. He walked up to her, handing her a cup, his face lit up with that familiar, warm smile. Right on time, Julian said, clinking his cup gently against hers. Gloria took a sip of the warm, sweet tea, looking out over the endless, open blue of the harbor, where the white sails of boats cut through the sparkling water toward the open ocean. She smiled, a true, deep, radiant smile that reached all the way to her soul. Yes, Gloria whispered, taking his arm as they walked together into the afternoon light. Right on time.